You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and there's a lot of football to get to, probably the Trifecta, but I gotta start with the Chicago Bears bringing in Ted Ginn Jr., a guy who I remember once killed the Jets in a game. I don't remember the exact game, but I remember he returned a kick or a punt for a touchdown. He may have had 2 touchdowns in that game, but I remember it was really big in the game. That's my big memory of Ted Ginn Jr. You know, Ginn's a guy who, if you wanted to call him a bust, you really could. This guy was taken 9th overall in 2007. And, look, he's made a nice career for himself as a special teamer. Probably the second best special teamer of his era, behind Devin Hester. But when you're the 9th overall pick, you've got to do better than a career high of 790 receiving yards. And, well, he did have 10 touchdowns in 2015. That's pretty good. But he never caught more than 60 passes. I mean, Ginn's a really, really good special teamer. No argument there. And as a wide receiver, he's gotten better as he's gotten older. It's kind of weird. He found a nice niche for himself. His second tour of duty with the Panthers and his first year with the Saints. But he's fallen off as of recently. I don't see where he's going to fit in with the Bears. When I look at their depth chart, they have many better wide receivers than Ted Ginn. I'm not even sure if he's going to be able to contribute on special teams. They have Tariq Cohen, and they brought back Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, interestingly enough, Patterson and Ginn are kind of in the same boat. Both first-round wide receivers that did nothing as wide receivers. Made their name on special teams. Look, it's nothing against Ginn as a special teamer. I just don't understand the fit with the Bears. They could certainly do a lot better if they wanted to add some competition at wide receiver. And they have no room on special teams. I just don't get the fit. Really, really weird to me. Moving on now to the Dolphins cutting Taco Charlton. And it's kind of funny how people were hyping up what the Dolphins did last year. I remember reading a tweet, and Charlton personifies this. The Dolphins had a lot of first-rounders on their roster, you know, guys who were considered busts for their previous teams, and they were giving them a chance to see if they could work with the Dolphins, and, oh, that's such a great plan, there's a plan in place, and they end up going 5-11. And now those first-rounders are off the team. Charles Harris, another first-rounder, just got traded. I'm going to get into that in a minute. Look, I'm not saying it was a bad plan, but it's not evidence of any great thinking. This idea that the Dolphins had a better year last year than the Jets, which is something I've seen a lot. This idea that the Dolphins are better set up for the future than the Jets. Look, they have a quarterback in Tua who I think has a higher ceiling than Darnold. I'm low on Darnold. There's no question. He's going to have to prove it this year. This is a make-or-break year for Sam Darnold. We said that last year. He got mono, so somehow he got a pass. And now, this is his make-or-break year. Look, I'm with you in the sense of quarterbacks. And they added a great talent in Byron Jones in free agency. A guy who I wanted the Jets to get. But the Dolphins went 5-11 last year. The Jets went 7-9. I think the Jets had a much better draft than the Dolphins. I'm not saying the Dolphins had a bad draft. I just think the Jets had a better draft. And this plan about bringing in the first rounders and seeing if they pan out, okay, fine. What did that get them? It got them a 5-11 record and they're off the team now. It meant nothing in the long run. Was it the right thing to do at the time? Yeah. They were tanking for Tua. Of course that was the right thing. But this idea that it was evidence of some grand design, there's a great plan in place, and the Dolphins are going to be great with this new regime, you have no idea if that's true. There are some people that will actually tell you that the Dolphins had a better year last year than the Jets. Ha! Ha! Let me go down the Jets rabbit hole for a minute, and then I'll get back to Charlton. The people who don't like Adam Gase as a coach, and they pull out all the offensive numbers, and they try to minimize wins. I mean, you want to talk about cherry picking. You know what the only number that matters is? Number of wins you finish with at the end of the season. And look, I said this in my Jets offseason preview. If your point is that the teams were that bad that it doesn't matter if you win or not, then just lose them. I mean, Gase is in a no-win situation there, in your mind. If they win, it doesn't mean anything. If they lose, how do you lose to this team? I mean, that's the typical guy who I hate can't do anything right scenario. That's ridiculous. And Joe Caporoso's the ringleader of it. Look, I like Caporoso. I follow him on Twitter. He's a smart guy, but his Gase opinions are just ridiculous. At the end of the day, the only number that matters when evaluating a coach and a team is the number of wins they finish with. You don't need to go crazy in depth with it. That's ridiculous. The Jets finished with 7 wins last year. The Dolphins finished with 5. Ergo, the Jets were the better team. You want to tell me that the Dolphins have a better future now because you like Tua more than you like Darnold? Hey, I'll trade Darnold for Tua in a heartbeat. If you can guarantee me that Tua's going to stay healthy, Tua has the higher ceiling than Darnold. I understand that both quarterbacks have injury concerns, but Tua's are more pronounced than Darnold's. But this notion that the Dolphins had a better year last year than the Jets, it's just ridiculous. Last time I checked, 7 is a bigger number than 5. I'd rather have 7 wins than 5 wins. And this idea that the Jets had an empty 7-win season, it didn't mean anything, it was a fluke. Look, it's certainly possible. We have to see what they're going to do this coming season. I'm skeptical, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got 6 wins. 5 is more likely. 6 isn't out of the realm of possibility. I don't think they're as good this year as they were last year. But back to Charlton. Like I said, he was a first rounder that the Dolphins brought in when they were tanking for Tua. Worst comes to worst, they can move on from him the year after, and that's what they did. He didn't play well for the Dolphins, only a 51.7 overall grade last year, according to Pro Football Focus. He was a great tackler, though, according to them. 73.1 overall grade there. You know, Charlton I didn't think was terrible with the Cowboys. I just thought he lost some confidence when he went to the Dolphins. Once a team moves on from you, they just give you away after 2 years. That can affect you. It wouldn't stun me if a team took another chance on Charlton. Like I said, he was okay for the Cowboys. He just needs the right system to get him back on track. The other former first rounder that the Dolphins moved on from was Charles Harris. The Dolphins traded him to the Falcons for a 7th rounder. Look, I understand the logic of never trading with a division rival. But if you're the Jets, how do you not offer a 6th rounder for this guy? I've always liked Charles Harris. I always thought he was a decent player. Came into the league out of Missouri like a bat out of hell. And yeah, he never took that next step. But he still played well. You know, I'll tell you, I'm not satisfied with the Jets' edge rusher opposite Jordan Jenkins. I like Jenkins. Solid linebacker. But I'd be lying to you if I said I was 100% sold on Zuniga. I like Zuniga. It was a solid pick. But you can do better. There's a reason that a report came out yesterday linking Clowney to the Jets. This was from Tony Pauline of Pro Football Talk. It's something I've been screaming for months. Get Clowney on the Jets. I mean, there's a reason that happened. It's because the Jets can do better at edge rusher. And Zuniga can come off the bench for a year. They can move on from Jenkins. Zuniga can come in. I don't mind that. The Jets need an improvement at edge rusher. Whether it's Jadeveon Clowney or trading for Charles Harris. I know they can't trade for Harris now, but it would have been nice. I certainly would have given up a 6th rounder for him. The Falcons easily win that trade. I mean, you take a look at their edge rusher situation. There's no place for Harris to start. Their front 7 is basically set with Alan Bailey, Tyler Davison, Grady Jarrett, Marlon Davidson, Dante Fowler Jr., Foyesade Oluokun, and Deion Jones. But there's nothing wrong with giving up a 7th rounder for a guy who, worst case scenario, is just a really good backup for you. The Falcons easily win that trade. And the Jets need to get Jadeveon Clowney. The draft didn't change that. Moving on now to the Bears signing Tayshaun Gibson. And I think it's a great move for the Bears. They had a hole at safety opposite Eddie Jackson. We all know how great Jackson is. But who's playing next to him? Deion Bush? No. HaHa Clinton Dix left. Jordan Lucas, no. DeAndre Houston Carson, no. Kentrell Bryce, no. Bringing in Gibson makes a ton of sense for the Bears. He still has something left. I didn't like that Bill O'Brien moved on from him so soon after signing him to a big deal. Really, really smart move for the Bears in bringing him in. I think the duo of Jackson and Gibson will be one of the better safety duos in the NFL. The last piece of football news that I want to talk about concerns the Panthers signing Michael Schofield. And I think it's a great move for the Panthers. Obviously, they lost Greg Van Roten in free agency to the Jets. And they really needed a right guard. They spent a 6th round pick on Dennis Daly last year. And Daly didn't set the world on fire. Now, he looked good in run blocking, but the Panthers could have done a lot better than him. And by bringing in Michael Schofield, a proven contributor, a guy who's started for the Chargers the past couple years really effectively, it's a great move for him. Great bargain basement signing. I think Schofield is going to fit in perfectly on that Panthers O-line. I think this could go down as one of the best bargain signings of the offseason. I really, really do. Alright, now it's time to recap the Buffalo Bills draft. It's kind of funny. Yesterday, I was watching a SportsCenter special. It was an old special. It was filmed, or aired rather, a few days ago. It featured Mel Kiper, Adam Schefter, Chris Mortensen, and Dan Orlovsky recapping the draft. So they were doing what I was doing. They stole it from me. In all seriousness, I did like the show. Mortensen seems to have lost a step, which is really sad. I like Mortensen a lot. But, look, I like Mel Kiper a lot. I like Adam Schefter a lot, and Dan Orlovsky should be the next color guy for Monday Night Football. But back to the Bills. Usually, when you don't have a first rounder, and the Bills didn't, they traded it to the Vikings for Stephon Diggs. But usually when you don't have a first rounder, that's gonna negatively affect your draft grade. Because you're not gonna get as good of players. But with the Bills' first 2 picks, in A.J. Epineza and Zach Moss, they got a player in the 2nd round who I had a first round grade on, and they got a player in the 3rd round who I had a 2nd round grade on. I thought Epineza was the 25th best player in this draft, and Zach Moss was the 54th best player in this draft. Epineza filled a huge need for the Bills at edge rusher. There were some people that were concerned as to how he'd fit in as a 3-4 outside linebacker. That's why he slipped so much. But he landed with a team that plays a 4-3 defense. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see if he's able to push Jerry Hughes for a starting role. I don't see him pushing Mario Addison. I know that Sean McDermott likes Addison a lot. But Jerry Hughes isn't getting any younger. He's going to be 32 when the season starts. Now he can still play. Great player. According to Pro Football Focus, last year in the regular season, Hughes had a 72.4 overall grade. But the fact remains that the Bills should have added an insurance policy, and they did. They added a great one in Ebenezer. A guy with great pass rushing skills, great instincts, plays the game really intelligently. His production in Iowa was really good. I like his frame at 6'5", 275 pounds. I don't think he could have landed in a better spot than the Bills. And Zach Moss, you all know how high I am on him. He had great production at Utah. Yes, he has to work on ball security, but you know what? He's a very underrated pass blocker. He's good in the passing game. Really competitive player. I'm a little confused as to the fit. They picked Devin Singletary high last year. I don't know why they picked a running back high again, but that 1-2 punch of Singletary and Moss does set the Bills up really well for the future. Gabriel Davis was a solid pick. The Bills could have stood to add another wide receiver. I know they traded for Diggs, but John Brown and Cole Beasley aren't world beaters. And Davis had a great year last year at UCF. He's a jack of all trades, master of none. I love his frame at 6'2", 216. Davis could have a pretty meaningful role for the Bills. Not this coming year, but the year after. That was a very smart pick by the Bills. Jake Fromm was really interesting. This is a guy who I had a 4th round grade on. I thought he was the 6th best quarterback in this draft. My order was Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Eason, Love, and then Fromm. Jalen Hurts was 7, and James Morgan was 8th, for whatever it's worth. There were some people that were higher on Fromm than me. They said that he was a winner, was really successful at Georgia. That means a lot. And look, I like the fact that Fromm has big game experience. It does mean something that he was able to play under the bright lights of Georgia. Alright? The people in Georgia love the Bulldogs. Either them or the Yellow Jackets. And Fromm's a smart player. He's an accurate passer. I get that. But he's not mobile. Has terrible arm strength. He profiles as a game manager, at best. In a perfect world, he's just a backup. In fact, I think that's what's most likely for him. An elite backup. A Matt Moore type. It's funny, it got to the point where some Patriots fans were calling for Belichick to draft Fromm. I mean, I don't know. Who's better, him or Stidham? It's close. I'm not crazy about either one of them. The Fromm pick made sense for the Bills. In the 5th round, it's perfectly fine. Matt Barkley, you could do better than him as a backup. And Davis Webb is just a 3rd stringer. Fromm could be the long-term number 2 to Josh Allen. Really, really good pick by the Bills. Tyler Bass was probably the best kicker in this draft. Their kicker last year was Stephen Hauschka. He's been there for the past few years, actually. And he's not bad, but he's also not great. He's going to be 35 when the season starts. I don't mind the idea of there being a kicker competition between Hauschka and Bass. And if Bass loses it, worst comes to worst, they could try to keep him on the practice squad. Or, you know what? The Bills have carried 2 kickers before on their main roster. They could do it again. I don't like that, but it is something they could do. Isaiah Hodgins was a guy who I had a late 5th, early 6th round grade on. The Bills were able to take him at 207 late in the 6th round. That's really good. He had a great year at Oregon State last year. 86 catches for over 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns. His ball skills are great. He's the son of a former NFL player in James Hodgins. He doesn't have good speed, and I don't like his separation skills, but this is a Bills team that is lacking true playmakers at wide receiver, with the exception of Stephon Diggs. Hodgins can develop into a solid player in this league. It was well worth the pick. I gotta say, I'm a little bummed that the Bills waited until the 7th round to fill their second biggest need at cornerback. And even then, they took a player who's not even that good. Dane Jackson was a true 7th rounder to me. I mean, he was a team captain at Pittsburgh, which I like, but he has a terrible frame. His cover skills are dreadful. He doesn't have good hands. You can make the argument that he should be a safety in the next level. The Bills really needed a corner to play alongside Tre'Davious White. If they're really, really sold on Josh Norman, which is fine. I like Norman a lot. You can put Norman opposite White, but you still need a nickel corner. Taron Johnson isn't that good. E.J. Gaines isn't that good. While I like the players that the Bills got, they didn't do a good job of filling their needs. That's going to bring down their grade a little bit. I'm going to give them a solid B. I like the players they got. Ebenezer filled a huge need, but that was the only one. Corner was a huge need. Dane Jackson isn't that good. They also could have stood to add some interior offensive linemen. They didn't do that. They drafted Zach Moss when they didn't need him. Wide receiver wasn't as big a need as corner was. Kicker wasn't a big need. Backup quarterback wasn't a big need. That's what I don't like about this draft. Alright, it is time for this day in sports history. On this day, in 1925, Chuck Bednarik was born. One of the toughest players in NFL history. You want to talk about wanting a player to back you up in a bar fight? You wanted Bednarik to back you up in a bar fight. He started his football career at the University of Pennsylvania. And he was a 60-minute man. What that means is he played both offense and defense. He played center and linebacker. And he did that in the NFL too. He also punted a little bit at Pennsylvania. He was a multiple-time All-American and won the Maxwell Award in 1948, which is presented to the best all-around player in college football. He was drafted first overall by the Eagles in 1949, and this was a time when a lot of big draft picks just flamed out. No one paid too much attention to the draft. There were a million rounds. No one really cared about it. It just wasn't a big deal. But Bednarik immediately came in as the first overall pick and made an impact. In his first year, he won an NFL championship. And from 1950 to 1957, he was first team All-Pro. He made the Pro Bowl every year in that stretch also, with the exception of 1955. But 1960 was his best year. And without question, his most iconic year. The Eagles were playing the New York Giants. And the Giants had a running back by the name of Frank Gifford. You may have heard of him. Bednarik hit Gifford so hard that he knocked Gifford out of football for 18 months. And if you can find a picture of Bednarik standing over Gifford, it just goes to show his toughness. He just didn't care. He's the epitome of an old school NFL player. Wouldn't make it for a second in today's NFL. Oh man. He'd be getting fined left and right. The Eagles made the NFL championship game that year and went up against the Green Bay Packers. Bednarik played every snap at center and linebacker. But he also made one of the most important plays in that game. In the final seconds, Bart Starr completed a pass to Jim Taylor. Taylor caught it on the run at the 17 and made it all the way to the 9-yard line where Chuck Bednarik brought him down. There was no one between Bednarik and the end zone. Without him, Taylor runs into the end zone and the Packers win the championship. But Bednarik was able to wrap him up and bring him down. He made sure that Taylor couldn't get up in time for the Packers to run one more play. And at the end of the game, Bednarik said to Taylor, and I quote, "You can get up now, Taylor. This damn game's over." That just epitomizes his toughness. If you can ever look at a picture of Bednarik's hands, you'll see that they're disfigured and just really ugly, but that's just how he played. He was a rough and tumble player, and he hated the way that the NFL was going into a safer game. He said that certain NFL players couldn't tackle his wife. Look, I understand the logic behind player safety, and I'm not saying that players shouldn't remain safe, but, at the end of the day, there has to be a balance between the two. The NFL has gone more towards player safety and not towards what made it great. These tough men just going at it for 60 minutes. Bednarik was also insanely durable. He only missed 3 games in his 14 seasons in the league. He was a 10-time first-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, made 3 NFL all-time teams, is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the College Football Hall of Fame, and was the last of the 60-minute men. Players who played offense and defense in the same game, for the whole game, on a regular basis. May he rest in peace. Alright, it's time for another Mount Rushmore. We're on the Philadelphia Phillies now, and it's kind of amazing. The Phillies have been around since 1883, and they've only won 2 World Series. 1980 and 2008. How are you around for over 130 years and you only win 2 World Series? That's incredible. And to make matters worse, they've had great players on their team. The correct Mount Rushmore is Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, Robin Roberts, and Jimmy Rollins. I mean, with the exception of Rollins, they're all in the Hall of Fame. I have a funny story about Mike Schmidt. I had a substitute gym teacher in middle school, and his name was Mr. Schmidt. Now, he introduced himself to me the first time. I didn't catch his name. He said it again. It's like, oh, like Mike Schmidt. Yes, exactly. Okay, great. One of the best third basemen of all time. Had 548 career home runs. And he stopped dead in his tracks and he said, let me shake your hand again. That's really impressive that you know that. I mean, Schmidt has 3 MVPs, spent his whole career with the Phillies, 12-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glover, World Series MVP in 1980. It was kind of close between him and Carlton for who the best Philly was, but I went with Schmidt because he won World Series MVP. But don't take anything away from Lefty. One of the most lopsided trades in baseball history is when the Cardinals traded Lefty to the Phillies for Rick Wise. The Cardinals didn't want to pay Carlton, but they were okay with paying Wise. Look, Rick Wise was a good pitcher, solid pitcher, but not as dominant as Lefty. I mean, you don't need me to tell you how great Lefty was. 4-time Cy Young winner, 10-time All-Star, actually a 2-time World Series winner. In addition to winning in 1980, he also won in 1967 when he came up with the Cardinals. Robin Roberts is one of the best players in baseball history to never win a World Series. He was a 7-time All-Star, was one of the best pitchers of the 1950s, and he absolutely killed the Yankees in the 1950 World Series. I mean, that Game 2 performance is nothing short of legendary. He pitched a complete game. 10 innings. Yeah, that's right, it went into extra innings. Roberts stayed in there. But so did Allie Reynolds. Reynolds was just a hair better than Roberts that day. But make no mistake about it, Roberts was frustrating the Yankees all game. They came very close to losing that game. And if they had lost it, who knows what would have happened after that. Game 2 of the 1950 World Series is one of the most underrated games in World Series history. Jimmy Rollins, when he was with the Phillies, was the heart and soul of that team. I remember in 2009 when he picked the Phillies to win in 6 games, every time he came up to bat at Yankee Stadium, the crowd was relentless. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what do you want him to say? You know, it didn't bother me that he said that at all, to tell you the truth. It may have even helped the Yankees out a little bit. They may have been more motivated. As if they needed any extra motivation. But Rollins was a great motivational leader. 3-time All-Star with the Phillies. 4-time Gold Glover. Has an MVP in 2007. Really, really good player. I hope you have a good weekend. It'll probably be more of the same. Some NFL news along with the Trifecta. Maybe we'll get some more updates on when these leagues are gonna get back on track. It seems like we're getting closer to it, but time will tell. Until Monday, I am Jacob Valk saying that I need her like Custer needs Indians.